Coming up on We Talk News this week, a historic week in the fight to end cannabis prohibition as the DEA takes up the HHS suggestion to move cannabis off Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act to Schedule 3. Cannabis stocks explode, but the industry has mixed emotions to the federal recognition that the plant actually has medicinal applications. Now, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and his sponsors reintroduce a legalization bill initiative in the Senate, but the prospects for that, or even safe banking, continue to be bleak. Meanwhile, a bipartisan group from the Senate and the House starts to formulate the new Farm Bill. However, there's no mention of intoxicating hemp-derived products. Yet, early reviews of the proposals are being championed by the U.S. hemp growers industry. Plus, MedMen, once a $4 billion valued MSO, files for bankruptcy with over $400 million in debt obligations. Republican Governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, rips 5 cities who have voted to decriminalize cannabis in his state, questioning their own right to override state law. So now, feds, states, and cities can't agree on the power of the voting public. A plant called Cannabis is right in the middle of it all. Coast to coast cannabis news on We Talk News with Elena Pinto. Next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of We Talk News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of cannabis news from coast to coast. I'm Elena Pinto. It's been a historic week in the fight to end cannabis prohibition in this country. The DEA has finally agreed with the Health and Human Services findings about cannabis and suggests a move to Schedule 3 of the Controlled Substances Act. That decision has been eagerly awaited by the industry, and reactions have been mixed. Everyone agrees that moving cannabis off the most restrictive schedule of the CSA is a huge win. It basically confirms that the plant does have medicinal applications. Plus, it's not as dangerous as the government has been warning the public about for over 50 years. The other positive development is that this anticipated move is expected to rid businesses from unfair treatment by the federal tax code and gets rid of the dreaded 280E clause. So now, cannabis businesses will be able to take the same deductions as any other business. It does not legalize the plant or even decriminalize it. And there is still going to be a public comment period that will delay any benefits from this move for a few months. Right after the Health and Human Services Department sent their recommendations to the DEA 8 months ago, former Massachusetts Cannabis Commissioner Shailene Title delivered the keynote address at the High Lifestyle Show here in the Bay State. Here are her thoughts on what this might mean for the industry.
And so this was largely described as a step in the right direction, but not enough, is how I would characterize it. It's more like a step in a very bizarre direction that fully contradicts the way that we use and sell marijuana. Why is that potentially a problem? Well, this is a completely unprecedented situation. So we have never before had a Schedule 3 substance that didn't first go through FDA approval and trials. We have never had an FDA approved Schedule 3 substance that is used as an intoxicant and a medicine at the same time. And we have never had a federally legal path for a business. Okay, so why does this matter? Well, imagine that we were having this event for ketamine use or steroid use. What do we think the federal government would do? We have absolutely no idea, right? And that is the problem. The other reason I think that perhaps this has gone unexamined is actually 2 reasons. So one is people ask, where did this come from? Did maybe Big Pharma push it? Did someone else push it? It's my opinion that this wasn't pushed by anyone in particular, but it's a political, half-cocked, unexamined idea that looks like it might be good, that it might placate and pacify the cannabis community, might get some votes right before an election, but the consequences of it to all of us have not been looked at. The other reason, and I don't want to discount this at all, is that it comes with a massive, massive tax break for marijuana businesses because of a specific law called 280E that would be reversed. It's actually going to keep small businesses, many of them, from going out of business because their tax rate would become better. Large corporations will also get a massive tax break. We don't know what they'll do with those funds, but I think that's the other reason why perhaps this has been applauded and not looked at in terms of what the consequences might be.
So what's next? Let's ask our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Andrew Behringer.
I'm Andrew Behringer, and this is the D.C. Area Report for We Talk News. In a long-awaited move, the Drug Enforcement Administration has agreed from the findings of the Department of Health and Human Services about rescheduling cannabis. The DEA is now suggesting rescheduling cannabis from a Schedule I to a Schedule III of the Controlled Substances Act. This decision has been eagerly anticipated by the cannabis industry, though reactions have been mixed so far. Moving cannabis off the most restrictive Schedule I category is being hailed as a huge victory by many. It officially confirms that the plant does have legitimate medical applications and is not as dangerous as the government has claimed for decades. Now, one major positive that came from this rescheduling is that it is expected to eliminate unfair treatment of cannabis businesses under the federal tax code. The dreaded 280E provision that has prohibited standard deductions would finally be removed, allowing these companies to operate on a level playing field. However, rescheduling does not actually legalize or decriminalize cannabis. It simply recognizes the plant's medical potential while still keeping it as a controlled substance. And with any policy changes will be a delay by a required public comment period lasting several months. Amid this DEA development, a powerful group of Senate Democrats led by Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has reintroduced sweeping legislation to fully deschedule and legalize cannabis at the federal level. Now, if you remember, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, CAOA, would remove cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act entirely within 6 months. The bill also calls for expunging past cannabis convictions, creating a federal regulatory system overseen by agencies like the FDA and TAF. Framework includes about a 5 to 25% tax rate, but the passage remains an uphill battle this year with a divided Congress. Still, both the DEA rescheduling and this new legalization push signal major momentum in ending the decades-long war on cannabis. I'm Andrew Behringer, and I'm reporting for We Talk News from the DC area. See you next week.
MedMen is bankrupt, or at least filing for bankruptcy in Canada. MedMen was one of the largest multi-state operators in cannabis with a $3 billion valuation just 6 years ago. After 5 CEOs in 6 years, the company started falling behind on its bills after executives went a little overboard on their perks. Private planes, luxury cars, and 24-hour armed guards were just some of the things the MedMen principals used their operational money on. That company is now in debt of over $400 million, and the LA-based MSO filed for bankruptcy protection in Canada. People knew they were in trouble when they started closing its dispensaries in California, Florida, and other states. The industry continues to be its own worst enemy when it comes to responsible operations. And traditional media loves it when they can expose mismanagement in the fledgling industry. When basketball star Brittany Griner was arrested for inadvertently carrying hash oil in her bags in a Russian airport, it shocked the world. And now she's telling her story to ABC's Robin Roberts, and a review by PCM founder Jimmy Young says, "Bring your tissues." In the meantime, the WNBA Phoenix Mercury star is releasing her book about spending 9 months inside a Russian jail and work camp. And Karen Black has more from Arizona.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Phoenix Mercury and WNBA All-Star Brittany Griner plans to release her memoir May 7th. It's called Coming Home, and the book describes her detention in a Russian jail for possessing vape cartridges with cannabis oil, which she planned to use medicinally while she played there in the off-season. The book's release coincides with the opening day of WNBA preseason play, where Miss Griner and the Mercury will take on the Seattle Storm. While the DEA considers rescheduling cannabis, another federal agency has been busy. The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol made 4 separate busts in Arizona in 2 days. They collected over 400 pounds of synthetic drugs like methamphetamine and fentanyl as part of Operation Apollo, which expanded from California to Arizona in April. It seemed the feds have bigger things to worry about than a medicinal plant. 2 legislative updates: a House bill that amends definitions of and penalties for the use of drugs, including cannabis, in school zones, failed the 3rd reading in the Arizona Senate by 1 vote, then passed a motion to reconsider. A Senate bill amending regulations on marijuana delivery passed the 3rd reading in the House. We'll see if these 2 measures make it any further this year. And the parties continue in the Grand Canyon State. On the heels of 420, Nirvana Center and Mint Cannabis held big May the 4th Be With You Star Wars themed sales, and Mint Cannabis hosted a 3-day Cinco de Mayo bash at its dispensaries. Soulflower celebrated both holidays at the grand opening of its immersive new dispensary in Tempe, which includes live plants, educational materials, and local art. Meanwhile, in Tucson, 2 entrepreneurs launched the Hippie Hub, a line of cannabis clothing. Owners Bianca Moya and Cordell Perry donate a portion of each sale to the Eden Restoration Project to plant mangrove trees in areas affected by deforestation. That's all for the Arizona Cannabis Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Weed Talk News.
Reaction from the cannabis industry continues over the news of the week, the DEA's approval to move it off Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act. And now the prohibitionists are gearing up for the public comment period that starts next. The face of that movement is Dr. Kevin Sabet, a former advisor to past presidents Clinton, Bush, Obama, and the founder of SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Sabet released a statement this week to counter some of the positive momentum of the reform movement by saying, quote, "Politics and industry influence have loomed over this decision from the very beginning, and that a drug isn't medicine because it is popular." Sam and Sabet have also said they will seek legal action if the move to Schedule 3 is approved. And yes, that organization is starting a fundraising campaign for that legal challenge. Sabet and the former narcotics drug czar from the 20th century, Harry Anslinger, are 2 of the most disliked people in the federal reform movement. On the other side of the argument, in support of reform, is our own Missouri correspondent, Brandon Jones.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And yeah, I just can't believe all this talk about how we don't want descheduling to happen. This is all going to be horrible. The worst thing that's ever going to happen. Kevin, what are you talking about? This is medicine. We all deserve access to medicine. And yes, this isn't the easiest, best road to get there, but we got to start somewhere. And for those of us that use cannabis as true medicine, not just some scapegoat reason to get high, we actually truly use this as something that helps us. Don't stop access to all of us. What are you doing? Rescheduling is something that can help us and can change things. No, it's not perfect. We all know that. We have to start somewhere. Cannabis is medicine. We should have access to anyone that needs it, wants it in this country. So, deep breath. Missouri news. Sales tax. So yes, government finds a way to get out of it, but they're finding another way to get into it. So they found a way to get up to 12% sales tax in the state of Missouri on top of recreational cannabis. So those, please get a medical card, get access to medical cannabis, and not get taxed. So, yes, rescheduling is a big thing. I do have a 4-year-old, and I care about how he can have access to cannabis in the future. So, yes, it's not perfect, but please get off this little rant that it's not medicine. Cannabis is medicine to us. 155 stitches in my face, glass coming out of my nose right now from a wreck in 1998, and I am off opioids because of cannabis. It is an exit drug, not a gateway drug. Please stop this talk. I'm going to go be a Canna dad, but thank you for Pro Cannabis Media giving this outlet to speak about how we truly feel about what cannabis means to us as correspondents for Weed Talk News. I'm Brandon Jones with the Missouri Cannabis Report. Have a great week. Stay medicated and educated.
That will do it for the A block, the first part of Weed Talk News this week. We have plenty more ahead in the B block as we continue our coast-to-coast cannabis reports on Weed Talk News. Don't go anywhere.
We feel like, that would be a worthy goal. That would be something that would really juice us up. It's great to make money in the industry, but it's also great to help people. And we're all about helping people figure out how to use the resources they have more resourcefully. That's really what this comes down to. And this technique we used back in 13 and 14 when the industry was first starting. I used it myself to raise $275,000 for my business. So I know it works. We're now dusting off the playbook for 2024.
Coming up on We Talk News this week, WNBA superstar and Olympic champion Brittany Griner gets busted at a Russian airport for carrying hash oil.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elena Pinto, and this is Weed Talk News.
Hey, everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Be Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Matthew Friedlander, coming to you from the owner's office here at Skagit Organics.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
My name's Tom. You can find me over at Cannabis Legalization News.
I'm Jill Goldsberry with Weed Talk News New Jersey, and we are back.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Our Canadian correspondent with Weed Talk News, Debbie Fazy, with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
I'm Doug Miller from Highland Wall Street with this week's Cannabis Stock Report for Weed Talk News.
Welcome to the B block of this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Elena Pinto. There are 38 states with medical cannabis programs who have decriminalized the plant across the country. In Arkansas this week, the first medical dispensary to have its license revoked was Green Springs. In that state, the Alcohol and Beverage Control Division implements inspections and fines. And in this case, that dispensary had close to 50 violations for the past 4 years that include selling expired items, sanitation issues, inventory discrepancies, and others. Well, what is going on in Las Vegas? America's adult playground is starting to get comfortable with their new social clubs for cannabis consumption. Our correspondent there, Tina Tasaka, has been doing field research, and here's her report from the 702.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, reporting this week's Nevada report for Weed Talk News. This past week, the Chamber of Cannabis held its political roundtable for one and all and spoke on many topics that are the forefront of all Nevadans, including the role of cannabis enhancing tourism, leveraging cannabis for local economic growth, political education for cannabis, along with health implications, social equity strategies, and better promoting in the cannabis space. The candidates that participated included Chandra Armstrong, candidate, City Council, Robert Taylor, candidate, City Council, Cameron C.H. Miller, candidate, City Council. Kara Jenkins, candidate, Las Vegas Mayor. Cedric Creer, candidate, Las Vegas Mayor. Las Vegas-based behemoth Planet 13 Holdings is a step closer to a major expansion in Florida. The Florida Office of Medical Marijuana Use, OMMU, gave the green light to Planet 13 for the proposed sale of Planet 13 Florida and the acquisition of Vitacom LLC, the company announced this past week. The sale of Planet 13 Florida, which owns a medical marijuana treatment center license issued by the Florida Department of Health to SGWFL Enterprises LLC, was a closing condition to the company's proposed acquisition of Vitacom. Planet 13 first announced that it had entered into a membership interest purchase agreement to acquire all of the ownership interests of Vitacan in August for $48.9 million. With this deal, the Nevada-based multi-state operator would obtain Vitacan's 26 dispensaries, representing Florida's 9th largest dispensary network. Acquiring Vitacans would significantly accelerate our time to market and, more importantly, scale in Florida. Vitacan is one of the 10 largest Florida cannabis operators by retail network size, and we believe it has developed a reputation for high product quality and customer service, Larry Scheffler, the company's CEO, said. Well, best to Planet 13, and we're all certainly watching Florida and following Amendment 3, the passing of recreational marijuana in the sunny state of Florida. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technology, and that's it for the 702 and Weed Talk News.
One of the most interesting things to develop during this early growth of the cannabis industry is the actual decline of active licensed operations. This is a trend in both Canada and in the US, where the market correction of investment capital and market saturation is identified as the biggest cause for that. In the US, the total number of licenses issued in the first 3 months of the year fell 8%, down to 39,850 licensed operators. That is the 5th quarterly decline in a row in the US. So it makes you wonder if the market is finally leveling off. Yet in states like Missouri and Michigan, growth in sales continues. Amy Carter tells us about a Detroit school superintendent who is calling for better packaging that doesn't look like regular candy. Here's Amy.
I'm Amy Carter with Michigan Weedsters for this week's Weed Talk News. Lee Chatfield, former Republican Speaker of the Michigan House, was indicted on 13 charges Tuesday, following a years-long investigation into allegations of campaign finance violations and sexual misconduct. The charges were announced in Lansing by Attorney General Dana Nessel. She said that Chatfield used campaign funds to cover numerous personal expenses, including luxury shopping, expensive meals, and vacations with family members. Lee Chatfield served in the Michigan House from 2015 to 2020. The Michigan legislature approved 10 bills related to marijuana during Lee Chatfield's 2-year term as Speaker of the House. The head of Michigan's largest school district in Detroit is calling on Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Detroit Mayor, and a host of federal, state, and local elected leaders to enact immediate policy changes to address the rise of edible marijuana use amongst underage high school students. The district recorded 289 drug-related incidents in the years of 2019 to 2020. That number has increased to 1,735 in the last 2 years. This school year alone, they have already faced 745 drug-related infractions as of last week. A week of school rarely passes where a student is not taken to the hospital due to intentional or unintentional consumption of edibles, said the superintendent. The Cannabis Golfers Association is hosting a golf outing at Orchard Hills in Buchanan, Michigan on June 3rd. For tickets or vending opportunities, go to cgaofficial.org. I'm Amy Carter with this week's Weed Talk News with Michigan Weedsters.
One market in the U.S. that welcomed the news of a potential federal tax break is California. The Golden State is still the #1 cannabis market in the country. And the movement off Schedule 1 of the CSA will only speed up the acceptance and normalization of the plant. This New England Cannabis Convention moved into Baltimore this week for their Maryland show, and Virginia's Joe Parsons was there covering that event for us.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection, and this is your Virginia Cannabis Report on We Talk News. Well, everybody, today I am in Baltimore, Maryland, covering the NECAN Convention. That's right, this is the first time that the New England Cannabis Convention has ever been this far south. So I thought I would come and check it out and possibly get a few words from some of the industry professionals about what they feel is going on with the latest news. And what's the latest news, you might ask? Well, unless you've been in the hole for the last few days, you know that it's the move, potentially, from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. So I'm going to find out what everyone thinks about it and hopefully get some good insight on where the industry is going in the future.
So I am Safita Artist Mills. I'm president and co-founder of the United Empowerment Party, along with our other co-founder, Redman, Reggie Noble. And we are a political party that is federally recognized, registered with the FEC, and we focus on cannabis policy and legislation. And our biggest purpose and mission in creating this party is to make sure that there's true representation for the people, that someone is the liaison between elected officials and the communities, making sure that we hold them accountable to the promises that they make to their constituents. In addition to that, we are pushing heavily for descheduling, which from the beginning we felt that that is what is necessary in order for us to truly free the plant and give it back to the people and make sure that we can get the most benefit out of this economically, as well as with research and development and what this plant does medicinally and healing people and communities all over the world.
As you can only imagine, that was a lot of fun and super educational. I was proud to be a part of the first time the New England Cannabis Convention came this far south to Baltimore, Maryland. Not only did I learn a lot, but I got a lot of great input from some industry professionals about the potential move from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. I'd also like to give a little bit of love to fellow pro-cannabis media correspondent Andrew Behringer. Thank you so much for allowing me some time to hang out with you and share your time with Madman Plant. So that's going to do it for this week's Virginia Cannabis Connection report on Pro-Cannabis Media's We Talk News. Once again, everybody, stay lifted.
The DEA announcement about its acceptance of the HHS recommendation to move cannabis to Schedule 3 sent the stock market booming in the cannabis sector. Doug Miller was one of the first to predict that something was brewing in that space about 3 weeks ago. And that's why we like his High on Wall Street reports. Here's Doug.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's Cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. Canopy Growth raised proceeds of roughly $50 million through an exchange and subscription agreement with an institutional investor. Now that the price popped, they got an investor to put more money into the company since they have a ton of debt, and this dilutes the stock price. Let's take a look at what I said prior to the stock price soaring. On January 23rd, 2024, I mentioned Canopy Growth was getting ready to run, and it was trading around $4.58. Then, on April 17th, 2024, I mentioned that they were all setting up, and I would not be surprised to see some form of federal legalization. Well, I was not too far off, as they rescheduled it 2 weeks after I mentioned that to a Schedule 3, and all the cannabis stocks were soaring. On April 30th, 2024, Canopy Growth reached $15.76 in the after hours for a gain of $11.18, or 244% plus profit. 3 days later, it's trading around $10.24. And that is why I always say lock in profits and trade smart. The chart's always set up way before the news comes out, and it's important to sell on that news. Cannabis stocks are still setting up to run more, but be sure to catch the dips and trade smart. And that's this week's Cannabis stock report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
That will do it for the B block of Weed Talk News. But when we come back, we will introduce you to our new correspondent from Texas, who has a story about their governor ready to sue some of the cities in that state who have decriminalized the plant medicine. Back with more after this.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Now, let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore, so I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now, if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. The guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind.
Welcome back to the final section of this week's Weed Talk News. We call it the C Block. We want to welcome a new reporter to our team, Lisa Williams. She hails from Texas and has a business called the Toke Agency. Here's an amazing story out of that state that shows how out of control some of our political leaders have become. The Texas governor is going after local cities who have already voted to decriminalize cannabis in their city. So the governor said he might have to sue those towns because they are challenging state law. Here's Lisa.
I'm Lisa Williams, founder of the Toke Agency, with the Texas Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Grab your Lone Star flag and a bowl of Bluebell because we've got some spicy Texas cannabis news for you. This week, the House of Representatives showed their compassionate side by advancing a bipartisan bill that aims to expand the state's medical marijuana program. This exciting bill, HB 1805, could allow those suffering from chronic pain to access medical cannabis as an alternative to opioids. The bill's journey isn't over as it's headed to the Senate, where it might face some roadblocks. But if it passes, it would be a major win for cannabis advocates and patients alike who have been seeking broader access to the state's limited medical marijuana program. The slow green wave of voter-driven marijuana decriminalization hits the largest city in the South Plains this weekend as Lubbock residents vote on a proposed ordinance that would decriminalize small amounts of marijuana. It's a test, not just for the movement, but the direct democracy in the Lone Star State. The proposed ordinance, if approved, would instruct Lubbock police to stop arresting adults for possession of less than 4 ounces of marijuana in most cases. Governor Greg Abbott recently weighed in on the issue of Lubbock's marijuana decriminalization initiative. While not taking a specific position on the ordinance, he emphasized that cities shouldn't override state law. Abbott highlighted that this issue extends beyond marijuana and warned that allowing cities to choose which state laws to enforce could lead to chaos in Texas. He encouraged those seeking changes in marijuana legislation to work with their state legislatures instead of pursuing local ordinances. That's the Texas Cannabis Report. I'm Lisa Williams, founder of the Toke Agency, reporting for Weed Talk News.
The small but growing multi-state operator Nova Farms is celebrating a $20 million capital infusion from Chicago Atlantic. That will help build out their vertically integrated facilities in Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Here's Jill Goldsberry with more in her New Jersey Cannabis Report.
Hey guys, I'm Jill with the Garden State Cannabis Report, and here's what's happening in our area. Cannabis sales in New Jersey are up 38% from this time last year. Sales have totaled between January and March of 2024 to over $201 million. Most of these sales are from the increase in licensed dispensaries that are now open, which are totaling over 100 shops currently. And the weekend of 4/20, on the day of 4/20, sales topped $5 million with a weekend closeout of $12.5 million. That's a lot of flower, guys. In other news, Women Power dominated this weekend as we celebrated with the biggest cannabis parade in New York City, featuring a complete march down Broadway, speakers, vendors, and ending the night with a huge party celebrated at the THC Museum, thrown by Cannabis and Tribe Tokes. It was definitely looked like it was a time with female bosses, owners, and marching for equality, partying for equality and equity in this space. We also noticed there was a female band in the parade in front of the Cannabis. So that was definitely a sight to be seen. And I took a little trip out to Necan, Maryland to see what was going on there and caught the business track panel of New Jersey, including regulators such as Diane Hunu of the CRC, New Jersey, former General Assemblyman and executive at Township Green Dispensary, Scott Rutter, and attorney Bill Caruso, all discussing the benefits of bringing cannabis business to New Jersey from the state of Maryland. And I'm hearing grumblings about a popular New Jersey brand that is set to launch in Maryland very soon. And I'll keep you posted on that as soon as that is confirmed. And we will also find out more about the other things that are happening, other brands that may be coming from Maryland to New Jersey. We'll keep you posted on that. That's it for now. I'm Jill Goldsberry with the Garden State Cannabis Report. See you next time.
Last but not least, here's an excerpt from the cannabis legalization news show with our Illinois correspondent, Thomas Howard, and sidekick, Miggy 420.
I don't know what's going to happen with hemp. We do know something about hemp. There's going to be a new definition of hemp, or like there's going to be a double definition of hemp. Stick around for that. Right now, the biggest story of the week was just a confirmation, something that we had been knowing about for, since pretty much September 1st of last summer, when we saw the memo directing HHS directing DEA to reschedule cannabis based on the facts and the science that HHS and FDA had. We got confirmation. We did not get an email about it. No. And so Miggy and I got an email about something else.
We did get an email, but it's something, but just as awesome. But it's phenomenal. But one of the hottest takes I think I got from this, from the Twitterverse, let's still call it that. But on this whole situation it was just a leak still, right? It hasn't been any final approval, hasn't been anything that's been enacted. There is no thing happening. Like that.
It was just confirmed that the DEA is going to go along with what they were told to do 8 months ago. Because it's part of the executive is going to be asking for different monies. And so when they ask for those monies, it goes into the budget. And so then they're going to figure out how to pay for this new regulatory scheme that they're going to have. And so it was the same thing like with hemp. Because like with hemp, and then there's news about hemp that we'll get to after we talk about Schedule 3 a little bit more. With hemp, like when they published that rule, it took a little bit longer for it to go like final, I think, because of COVID. But then they had mechanisms to test. And so those still have not come to fruition in the sense that all the hemp that's cultivated is not tested by DEA approved labs yet. And they just keep continuing that out.
And finally tonight, Not sure about you, but there are many people who are obsessed with the royal family, whether in England or the American-based couple of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. The London media is still tracking the adventures of the royals, and in this case, not afraid to report on rumors. And yes, it has cost many publishers legal fees to squelch liability claims. Well, there was a rumor that Meghan Markle was going to produce a cooking show for Netflix on a cannabis farm. Well, that has been put to bed by a source close to the princess. But that didn't stop the London press from splashing that rumored report all over the place. So you have to sympathize with the family that has very little privacy when they leave their property, thanks to the paparazzi who follow them everywhere. Yeah, anyway, they'll be fine. That's Weed Talk News for the week. I'm Elena Pinto, and remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly.
What if we're right? What if all of a sudden they discovered that there is medical use for marijuana and that it is good for you and it's better than alcohol and it's better than opioids and it helps your health? What if we're right? What if they find that out?
Specific cannabinoids have medical value. These are facts.
I'm here today in hopes to assist in removing the demonized stigma of cannabis and the perception that cannabis is just about getting high. The true base of this plant has to be known.
I don't think anybody should ever go to jail for cannabis. Get some medicine, and everybody should have access to it.
This is something which, at the very, very least, is the key to alleviating suffering and extending life for millions of human beings. Right? For returning some kind of balance to our society, and quite possibly of restoring our planet's natural balance as well.